Hey, good afternoon, YouTube family. Tio here with Simplistic Fishing. Hey, today I want to do something for one of our subscribers. They asked us to do a pre-spawn strategy for Lake Lavon. So, without further ado, let's jump on into this thing.
All right, so jumping into Lake Lavon, we've talked about it before. We're not really going to cover anything above 380, so up in this area at the top. Not going to cover anything in that area. Apparently, there's just tons of trees up there. I know there's tons of trees up there, and even one of the subscribers said don't waste the time up there. So we're not going to mess with that. Obviously, you'd fish around those bridges that we talked about that. And then here, where this highway comes across, can't remember what highway that is, but we'll definitely avoid that northern half too. It gets pretty hairy up in there. So with all that being said, let's talk about pre-spawn strategy for Lake Lavon. So when we're talking about pre-spawn, first thing we're looking for is we're looking for creeks. Anywhere the creeks are coming into these coves or to these bays. We're also looking for shallow bays or shallow pockets that are 5 to 6 feet or less. So those are all the things that are going to be good attraction spots for these bass. The other thing is we're going to be looking for northern facing coves or pockets, or pockets or coves that are protected from the northern facing winds. So with all that being said, there's still a trick to bass fishing, and that is they're not always where you think they're going to be. Sometimes you'll think in pre-spawn they should be in all these spots, and you may go fish all these spots we talk about today and not even catch a fish. But don't get disappointed. You're fishing the right areas. You just got to kind of figure out the patterns that they're on. And then the other thing that I've learned from my fishing here in Texas over the last 7 or 8 years is that rocks are your friend. If you can find rocks, it doesn't matter if it's pre-spawn, post-spawn, summertime, wintertime, doesn't matter. If you find the rocks, you usually can find the bait fish, and then you can find the fish. So if you start struggling, just go to the rocks. The rocks can save a day really, really quickly if you're having problems out there or you're struggling. So with all that being said, let's go ahead and get started. We're going to start on the west side, just like we did with the Google Earth waypoints. You've got a shallow area up in here with some flooded timber. I'm not sure, I've never fished up in here, not sure if you can get back in here, but if we're talking pre-spawn, you got to start kind of thinking, where are they going to go spawn at? So if they were spawning up in here, which these look like good spawning flats, they're very shallow and they're protected and they're northerly facing and there's a creek to them. They're probably not all the way back in there yet, especially with this crazy cold front that we had. It's just got the fish all jacked up. They're not where they're supposed to be, and they're not as shallow as they should be in some of these lakes. So what I would do if I was fishing up in this area is I would probably look around these secondary points. So look in these areas, look around these creek channels, and then look around this point in here. I'm not saying this is a good spot at all to go fish. In fact, I've never even fished up there. But if I were looking at this time of year, if I couldn't find them super shallow, I would just back off and hit these secondary points. So a couple other areas you might want to take a look at. You've got a nice little secondary point here, or just kind of a main lake point, not very big at all, but it's got a little bit of a flat on top of it. So maybe just scan in this area. You got a boat ramp around there too. When you get into these pockets, the thing that I want you to look for is you're looking for stopping spots, right? Stopping points. So where would they stop before they got into the back of this pocket? So again, this pocket's pretty well protected by the northern wind. And you've got a creek channel here too, so this might be one that you'd want to go take a look at. If you can't find them up here in the shallow flipping around stuff, back off and look for their first stopping point, which in this case would be this roadbed. So you definitely want to take a look at this roadbed pre-spawn, because if they haven't moved up into shallow yet, they're really close. They're somewhere close by, and this is a really good stopping point for them to stop at. You also want to take a look at all those Google Earth waypoints that we covered in the last video and look for any of those spots that would be close to secondary points or halfway back in the back of a large cove or like a major creek arm or something like that. Get halfway back and then start looking for that structure, and then work on all of the cover and the structure that we point out, work on all of that stuff and work it back into the back of the creek. So as opposed to working halfway and moving your way out, you're just going to you're going to start halfway and you're going to work your way in. So again, good stopping spot here. This cove doesn't really do much for me. I don't see too much here, but this cove is very well protected. We could even see it on Google Earth. It was very well protected, and that we got some mats that grow around these docks and things like this. So I could see this being a spawning area. It's protected from the wind. It's probably got some pretty good, it's got decent depth to it, and then it's probably got some pretty good water temperatures even right now. So this could be a good area to look at. If they're not in the back by this creek channel, again, pull off and start looking more in these secondary spots. So maybe look right here, just in this little area right here. They could be crammed up right in there. Or look on the edges of look up here at these tires and see if they're hanging on the tires. Maybe they stopped on the tires before they went over there. Maybe they're stopped on these docks before they go into to spawn. So this would be a good area to look at come pre-spawn. Moving on down, not a lot here that I would focus on from a pre-spawn strategy. You do have a pretty good break that's right there, but from a pre-spawn standpoint, I guess if they did spawn back in here, which I don't know if they would because it's not really that protected, but if they did, they could be setting up right there on that break, so maybe something to take a look at. Then we're going to move on down, get some road beds and things like that. I talked about this before. This looks like an area they would spawn in, right? You've got very protected by the wind. You got lots of cover and stuff that they can hang around. They got shade, they got trees, all kinds of good stuff back in here. But again, we're talking pre-spawn, so if they're not all the way back in there, look for them about halfway. So this point right here would be really good, especially around this creek bed. If you've got structure here around these tires or whatever is here, you might want to take a look at that as well. And then also the tires here on the front of this bay or this cove could be really good as well. And then if you move on down here, I'm not sure if they would move over here or not. This is somewhat protected by a northerly wind because you do have, this point that comes out and kind of protects it. But take a look at this roadbed and just see if they're there. It's a shallower roadbed. It could be a spot where they're setting up and staging before they go either back into the back of this thing or maybe even into this little pocket. So moving on over, we're going to keep going. Again, we're looking for stopping spots where they would stop before they got into the back of these things. And if you look at this area right here, I'm going to zoom in. This is a prime area for that. So we're coming in here. Let's say that they're going to come back here and they're going to spawn back here on this big flat that's back here, or this cove that's got the creek. So if they're going to spawn back here, they're either going to stop on these docks or they're going to stop right here on this roadbed that comes out here by this creek channel where these 2 points come in. So this would be a great place to take a look at come pre-spawn right there. You may even also want to check out right in here. So again, you kind of see the pattern that I'm getting to. I'm not saying don't go back in the back of these things and see if they're back there, because they could very easily be back there and you could have a heyday flipping stuff. But if you can't find them back there, just back off a little bit and you'd be surprised at how quickly you can find them. They're close by. I promise you that. All right, so moving on down here, we talked about this rock pile on Google Earth. Take a look at that. That's a great spot to look. Pre-spawn, I know there's no coves nearby. They could get up in here and spawn possibly, but it's rocks and it's out towards the main lake. You can't go wrong. There's probably some of them still out there in their winter feeding pattern, and that could be a really good spot to take a look at. So this area right here where that rock pile is, always take a look at that. All right, then moving on down, we kind of get down here by the dam. There's not a lot of pre-spawn type stuff to fish down here. But like I said before, even if it's pre-spawn, you can't always guess what these fish are going to do, but you can almost always guarantee the fish are going to be around the rocks. It doesn't matter what time of the year it is. So if you're struggling, just head to the dam, put you on some crankbaits, and go to town. You should have some luck down there. Coming into here, if they do spawn back in here, which is possible, they could definitely spawn back in here. I would take a look at these road beds and things like that where it starts getting a little bit shallower. This isn't particularly a place I would focus too much on pre-spawn, but you never know. You could catch them here at the right time, come the right time in the spring. Now, when we move on up, we did talk about that boat ramp that was out there, and I said it's kind of a community hole, and we tend to, catch fish on this boat ramp. There is sorry about the scrolling. There is a submerged roadbed that comes over here to the left of, or to the north of where the boat ramp is. This to me could be a good pre-spawn spot as well, because if they're coming out here from the main lake, they could be stopping here before they move here to stop and then move on back, or they could be stopping here before they move up in these two pockets to do some spawning. So this would be a good area right in here to take a look at, right where that boat ramp is and everything right in this area, and then also take a look at that roadbed and see if you can find anything on there. All right, then moving back, always fish this riprap around this railroad track. And this opening is really good. You've got a good creek channel coming through here. This can be good pre-spawn, post-spawn, summertime, wintertime. It doesn't matter. This is always a good area to fish when you're on Lake Lavon. It's going to be a crowded area, so if that's the spot you're picking to start the tournament, you might want to be the first one there because somebody else is definitely going to come there. All right, and then moving on down, I'm sure they spawn up in these little pockets. I don't see too much here, that I can relate to from a navionics standpoint to say, go look in this area. You may take a look at this roadbed that's back in here. This could be good. But one spot I told you to check out on Google Earth when I went over those waypoints, and I still want you to do it here, especially pre-spawn, is right here where this old boat ramp is. You've got the creek channel that runs through here. You've got some rock on the side of these boat ramps, and you've got some pretty good depth here. This would be a perfect stopping spot for them to stop at after they came out from the main lake. They could come here and stop and then move on back in here into the shallows to do their spawning. So take a look at that boat ramp. That could be a tournament winning spot if you hit it at the right time. Then we're going to move on up. We got a roadbed back in here, so take a look at that. If they're not back in here and all these bushes and stuff, you flip back in there and you can't find them, just pull back a little bit and see if you can find them hanging out around this roadbed. Same thing in here. You got a nice flat. I'm sure they spawn up in this area. So again, you're looking at where they would go if they're not up in this shallow spot. Where would they be? Start looking at the secondary area. So right in here, maybe in this flooded timber, they could be hanging out right around this area before they go back in there to spawn. So look at that side. This side of the bank line is always treated as pretty good on Lavon. So I would definitely hit up all this area right in here, especially around this little point. Then moving on in here, same thing again. You got a north-facing little pocket here, a little cove. You've got some flooded timber in here, so I can definitely see them staging up in here in this flooded timber, right in this area and right in this area. Probably going to head up into there, and that would be a really good spot to take a look at come pre-spawn. The other area that you may want to take a look at pre-spawn would be this area right up in here that we've talked about. It's right in this area. It's like an old pond dam or something like that. But take a look at that area as well, because they could get way back in here and maybe spawn back up in here somewhere, or maybe up on these sides. But this is a good area for them to hang out in, and it's got some pretty good depth as well. Moving on up the bank line, I'm sure there's areas in here that they spawn at. I just don't see anything too particular that really catches my eye that maybe would make me want to stop there and fish it. But this area here looks pretty interesting. You definitely got some pretty good protected spots here. You've got Pebble Beach Park. I think this is a swim area as well. So they probably get up in here and spawn somewhere. So if I'm looking around here, I'm probably going to scan around, just see if there's any type of cover or anything like that I could find under the water. If not, probably got to pull over to this roadbed right here and just see if they're sitting on that roadbed. And then if they're not there, then I'm going to come out here to this point and scan around this point and see if I can find anything around this point. I know they're in here somewhere. Just got to figure out where. All right, moving on up. Don't see anything here that you need to focus on. Did have a couple things in here. There were some crappie spots right here in a creek channel, and you've got a big shallow flat area up in here. So if you want to risk it and go back in here, there's lots of stumps and things that you can hit with your boat. But this does look like it could be a decent area, especially right up in here in this little cove. I like how it has the creek channel that comes through it. It's got a nice little secondary point right there. And then I really like how this comes out shallow. It's 6 feet right here and it goes to 12 feet. So it's got a nice little point. This could be shell beds right in here as well. So take a look right here. This could be a good pre-spawn spot right off the tip of that. All right, then moving on in. Got some good road beds in here that you may take a look at, especially if they're shallow. That's really shallow road bed, but they could be up in there. And then over in here, this for sure is probably a spawning pocket facing north, very well protected. If they're not up in there, look for them on these secondary spots right here. And maybe over here, that one's not as significant, but right here looks really good, right around in this area. All right, we're gonna go ahead and move on up. I think we're getting close to the other side of it here. So coming over here, same type thing that we saw down below, we are covering that. So you've got these really good shallow flat areas. This one's facing north. This one looks pretty well protected just because it's so narrow. So if I'm looking at this and thinking, where would they stop? First place they're stopping is here on this point. Second place they're going to stop is right here on this culvert. And then they're probably going to go in and do their thing. And if they don't do that, they'll probably come right here to the split, stop right here, and then make their move. So take a look at all those stop signs if you can't find them shallow. So then moving on up here, another good spot would be right here. We talked about this on the Navionics for Lavon as well. Good spot for them to stop at here, coming off the main lake, wherever they're headed. So definitely look at this area. It's got the roadbed, it's got a little timber, it's got a high spot, it's got a lot of good things going for it. And then when we get back in here to Pilot Grove, take a look at the Google Earth waypoints that we talked about. Fish that weed line that's out here. That could be good for you. Fish the flat if they're up there in the shallows. So all of that area could be good for you as well. And then switching over here to this side, again, a lot of trees in this area, so be very, very careful. But you do have a nice shallow area up in here. And you've got another one that's right in here. So if you can't find them shallow right there, look on the edge of that point. And if you can't find them in here, my guess is they're probably setting up right around in here. Or they could even be all the way out here by their next stopping spot, which if you can't find anything good in here, maybe take a look at that roadbed. I've never fished up here, so not sure what you'll find up there. Coming on back down in here, we're looking, and we got a nice creek channel that comes here, some flat areas. Again, if you can't find them in the shallows, you're looking at the secondary spots they could be at. This would be right here, right off the edge of that point on this side. And right here, you see a pretty decent break as well in that little area too. And you've got a creek bed, so you may have some flooded timber or some brush piles that could be right around this area as well. I'm going to go ahead and keep moving on down, skip all of those, show you guys where I'm at here. And then we get up here into my Ticky Creek Park. This looks like it could be good. I mean, you've got some good shallow flats up here. You definitely could find some fish in here in the springtime. We talked about that roadbed being right there, and it just so happens somebody put a fish marker on there. You've got a good creek channel that's coming through here. Anywhere in here, fishing this roadbed too could be great. They could definitely be setting up here before they get back into that shallow area, so take a look at that. Also take a look at these points that come off here, right here, and right here could be decent as well. So take a look at those things, because this looks like it could be a prime spot for you guys to go into. Just be super careful. Again, lots of trees back in there. Now, if you don't find them all the way back in there, maybe as you're going back in, take a look at this point right here. See how it has this huge flat that comes out here 9 feet and then drops to 15. Just kind of scan around there and see if you see them setting up there. They could be setting up there, maybe just not as far back as we think they are. All right, moving on down. The next one we're going to look at is this one right in here. This is a pretty long cove that goes up, and it's very well protected. The problem is there's not a lot of secondary points and things like that we can focus on. But going back, what I would do is I'd probably definitely check that submerged culvert, see if there's anything on that roadbed. If they're not there, I'm going to swing back and I'm looking for the next thing. So I'm probably going to be looking off this side, this point, the side of this point. If I don't find anything there, then I'm probably going to keep going, and then I'll look for this on this culvert to see if they're on that culvert. And then from there, it's basically just shallow fishing. So from a pre-spawn perspective, these culverts would be the main areas that I would be taking a look at, these roadbeds and these culverts, where they would be stopping at before they go back there. Another good spot right here. We talked about this on Google Earth as well. In fact, I think I told you guys the drop was here, and it's actually on this point off the side, but this one has a pretty good drop too. So take a look at this. This looks like a great area. Good top, shallow flat right at the top that comes off. Probably got some shell beds in here. You got some good spawning pockets going back in there, and you've also got that up there that we talked about. So definitely look at that spot. Look at this spot as well. It's got the good drop off. It'd be a good spot for them to stop and hang out at. And if you can't find them here, maybe just slip back and look at this roadbed and just take a look and see if they're on that roadbed. Then we get through here, we know they spawn up in here, so anything that they could stage on prior to going in there, take a look at. Maybe take a look at some of this timber that's over here, flip around it, and then we're going to circle back and we're going to talk about this area right in here. So you've got the roadbed that's right here. You've got railroad tracks that are right here. You got a little funnel in here. They could come up in here and even spawn up in here. So take a look at some of this, because this cover and structure that's down in there, it could actually help you and actually locate the fish, and they could be grouped up in these areas. So take a look at this area right in here. Then I'm going to move on over here. The next spot that I would probably go look at would be up in this pocket. You do have some flooded timber that's in here that I talked about. I think it's right off of this point right here. You got a submerged culvert out here, so I'm looking in here for sure. See if I can find them. My guess is they probably spawn in here, here, and all the way up in there. So you're looking in these areas here. Over here, you've got some more, an old roadbed that's right there, and some flooded timber. So work all that flooded timber and work those little secondary points. I think you're going to have some success. If you can't find them in there, maybe you need to go out a little bit deeper. This point has treated us pretty good before too. So nice shallow point that comes out and then has a good drop. It's got some flooded timber around it. And I think this is where those tires were as well. So take a look at that spot. That could end up producing for you. It may be that they're not out there anymore. They're further into the coves, but take a look at it, because the experience that I've been having lately is that these fish are a lot deeper than what I anticipate them to be, except for on Lake Tawakoni. They seem to be way up in the shallows and the flooded stuff on Tawakoni, but everywhere else we've been, we've actually had to pull out a lot deeper than what we thought in order to be able to get those quality fish. So the only spot I have left is the same spot that we ended out on Google Earth, and that would be right over here. There's some flooded timber. I know it's pre-spawn, that doesn't make sense, but like I said at the beginning of the video, sometimes you just can't predict what these guys are going to do. So definitely fish this flooded timber that's over in here. It's right in this area. Take a look at it. See if they're setting up on there, if they're staging there for some reason. Not sure where they're headed, but they could definitely be in there. So take a look at that. So that really should give you guys plenty of spots to take a look at on Lake Lavon. Remember, go back about halfway, start halfway and work your way back. And then as you start to catch fish or get bites, remember where you're getting those bites at. Were they on the secondary points, or were they in the backs, like the very backs of those coves with creeks and things like that? And pay attention to your surroundings, because once you figure out that pattern, then you can just take that same pattern and run the entire lake with it. So if you find them on a secondary point, you're golden, because we just went over a bunch of secondary points, and you can run each one of those until you start really starting to catch some good quality fish. Or maybe you'll find that one secondary point that's all you need to do is just set on that one spot all day to win that tourney. I'm not sure what it's going to take, but I hope you guys have a lot of fun out there fishing. I look forward to going out to Lavon here pretty soon. We've just had a lot of tournaments coming up, so I haven't had a chance to get out there. But tight lines to all of you. Wishing you the best of luck. Hope you get your PB this spring. Take care.